Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated Legacy action. If you know me, you know that I love mono-white painter in Legacy. It's sort of my little niche deck that I play quite a bit, and a friend of mine from the Painter Discord, a guy called Quentin, just posted this 5-0 list, and I'm on board to give it a go. So normally the sort of white painter decks either go into the Ingenious Smith route or the Stoneforge Mystic route. Now this one has gone a completely different way and is running 4 Phyrexian Dreadnoughts. If you're not familiar with this card, it's a 1 mana 12/12 with trample, but when it comes into play, you have to sacrifice a load of stuff to keep it in play. But we're going to ignore that because we are playing 4 Hushbringer and 4 Torpor Orb. So Phyrexian Dreadnought is another thing we can get off our Urza Saga instead of getting our Grindstone for our combo. It's something we can shoot the 4 with Oswald. So it's got quite a lot of useful ways of plugging into this deck. It's also an artifact for the purposes of Metalcraft if we need that. So this seems like a good fit. I've tried playing Painter Dreadnought deck before, but it was quite different to this. It was running like Restoration of Aganjo and stuff. But I didn't put it up on my channel. It was just something I was playing around with. But this build looks a lot cleaner, and it seems to be doing things in a much better way. So why is this deck like this? So the problem a lot of decks are having at the moment is Initiative is an incredibly strong deck that makes a lot of fair plans just not work. So most of your creatures are going to get outclassed, you're not going to be able to attack through them, etc, etc. Now, Phyrexian Dreadnought, this guy attacks into pretty much everything but a Merit Large token. So this is always going to be able to attack and get you the initiative as well as being a 2-turn clock against whatever they're doing. So that's pretty sweet. So instead of going for like a fair plan, you're kind of going over the top. But to facilitate this, we're also playing these Hushbringers and Torpor Orbs, which ruin our opponent's ability to even get the initiative if we get these in play first. They won't be able to gain the initiative, they won't be able to delve through their dungeons more. So this is going to hopefully facilitate what we're trying to do with our Dreadnought, as well as being able to help against what they're doing. It's also going to be very good against a few other decks. Things like Elves and Death and Taxes are going to struggle a bit if you're stopping all their come into play triggers. Now this is a 2 mana 1/2, so it's not the hardest thing to kill, but usually we're going to play this and play a Dreadnought in the same turn. But sometimes we might have to play this out earlier depending on the matchup. So what else is this deck doing? So if you watch my channel, you'll know a few of the standard parts of Painter Servant here. So obviously you have the Painter Servant, the Grindstones, and the Urza Saga. So the Urza Saga just lets us have more copies of Grindstone as well as some utility things. Usually you're looking at a Pithing Needle, but that's in the sideboard for this one because we're going a little bit harder and we're running these Dreadnoughts. But the Soulguide Lantern and the Shadowspear. And this new Haywire Mite I'm a big fan of. And because we're running all this free mana with the Lotus Petals and Mox Opals, it means that paying the green on the Haywire Mite is relatively elementary, I would imagine. So this is a nice inclusion that we can get off of our Saga that can blow up chalices and things like that. It is non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. But that still means we've got main deck answers to Blood Moon through these and main deck answers to Chalice as well. So hopefully this will come quite nicely. We've got 3 Savannahs here. Now, our deck is quite weak to Wasteland. That is an obvious thing that I can see here. But hopefully we can sort of get around that by having like this free mana here and the fact that our best lands are always getting hit by Wasteland anyway. So we may as well lean into that and give them multiple targets and chances of making a mistake instead of just holding it back to kill our Saga. So, you know, ebbs and flows a little bit. The other thing that's really standard in all the mono-white painter decks is the Oswald Fiddlebender. So this lets you tutor up whatever you need at the time. So you can turn your artifact lands into grindstones, turn your grindstones into painters or whatever. We can also go and get canonists, and because we're running Torpor Orb, this is another thing we can find. So you've got less silver bullets here, but we've got more just like solid numbers of things. So I'm going to see how that pans out. The one interesting thing to me in this list that I wasn't expecting when I heard about it was the Once Upon a Time. Obviously, if you play this on the first turn, it's just a free impulse. Well, impulse plus, it's 5 cards really. And, you know, you're going to be finding lands or creatures off of it. So it's got quite a lot of hits in terms of, like, all of these and our Dreadnoughts and our Haywire Mite. So we've got all of these as well as all of our lands. So we should have a lot of hits. And Urza Saga is just a very powerful card, so we can go and get that. That's a pretty worthwhile thing to find, as well as soul lands. So the idea is this deck can shut down the initiative with these cards, but also can kind of race it with the fact that we're running Dreadnoughts as well as all this extra mana, so we can just sometimes just combo our opponent out super early. There's not much they can do about it. Now, this deck has one very obvious weakness I'm sure you've noticed, and that is the fact that it's incredibly reliant on artifacts. Now, some of the other painter builds, like the mono-white Stoneforge build, is not so bad against stuff like Meltdown because you have less Ancient Dens and you can play things like Cauldron, which don't get hit by Meltdown or Brothers War or whatever. However, we're just leaning into this for more power. So yes, we are weaker to big artifact hate, but the upside of that is we just have more intrinsically powerful stuff of just dumping these Dreadnoughts into play. And also having all this fast mana using the Mox Opals and stuff. So I'm curious how it's going to pan out. And I was going to run like a quick league today with something like Oops or Spells or something like that because I'm pretty tired. However, when I saw this list, I just had to give it a go. It looks really interesting to me. Quick chat about the sideboard. Bit of graveyard hate, pretty understandable. One Hearse is fine because we can fetch it with our Oswald Fiddlebender, so that's not a problem. Few Thorn of Amethysts, so we can board these in. They're going to sort of like generally be extra things on top of the Canonist for some matchups. And because we do have the Ancient Tombs and the Lotus Petals, casting this on turn 1 is actually a pretty reasonable thing we can do. March of Otherworldly Light in case we need more removal for like non-creature. Well, this can hit creatures as well, so it's really flexible. But we're generally going to be boarding it in to hit non-creatures, but we can also board it in for things like Marriage tokens and so on. And Ensnaring Bridge, I'm not sure exactly where the Ensnaring Bridge is going to be in. Probably things like Sneak Attack mainly, but you don't see that much of those decks. I think a lot of the time we're just going to want to race with beating down with our own guys. So Ensnaring Bridge, I'm not sure how often we're going to bring this in. Pithing Needle we mentioned earlier. I wouldn't have minded seeing one of these in the main. So maybe we could cut a Once Upon a Time for one of these, depending on how this goes. But obviously, I've not played this list yet, so I'm going to see how it fares. And the Blacksmith Skill. This was a card that overperformed for Quentin when he sent me the list in the Discord. And he wanted another one. So we've got 3 in here from his original 2. So if you're not familiar with this, it's a 1-mana instant. Target permanent gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. If it's an artifact creature, it gets +2/+2. So we can use this to pump our Dreadnought in terms of its power and toughness as well. Or just saving these things is pretty good. And because it's target permanent, we can also use this to play around Wastelands in some matchups. Now, whether or not we're going to be bringing this in matchups that are pretty Wasteland heavy remains to be seen. But I think it's just going to be a really good way to protect our bits and pieces and keep it going. Obviously, protecting the painter is kind of essential. The other builds tend to have Mother of Runes, so we've leaned into Blacksmith's Skill instead. So it is a little bit more mana intensive because it's not something we just have on the board. But this is harder for decks to interact with. And also, we have a lot more mana readily available early on because we have all this bonus mana and Ancient Tombs. All right, I think I've spoken about the list quite enough. Everything in it makes sense. It looks much smoother than the build I tried to run before. And hopefully we'll run good with it and see how we do. Maybe take down some initiative along the way. That'd be good. All right, so before we jump into it, let me just say, if you can like, comment, and subscribe, these things really help me out. And if you know anyone who's interested in legacy content, please send them my links. I need to hit 1,000 subscribers at some point. That's the sort of break point for me getting monetized and being able to get back some of my play points I throw into some very weird and wonderful decks I try for you guys. All right, let's jump into a legacy league with monowhite Painter Dreadnought. I'll think of a pithy name for it, I'm sure. All right, that's what we're going to play. So this hand is a turn 2 Phyrexian Dreadnought with an Urza Saga plan to go alongside it. That seems pretty good. We're a little bit cold to Wasteland, but we're probably going to find a land off this Once Upon a Time. I imagine this should be a keep. This can also tick down and get us the Grindstone for the Painter 7 as well. So we can keep this. We are on the draw, so we might just get white plumed on turn 1, and this might be slightly too slow, but we'll see what our opponent's playing. Okay, looking more like Delver. Let's play this Once Upon a Time for free. We could... Do we want to play out our... Because we don't know what land we're going to play. If they want to daze this, that's a little bit awkward, but because we found the land, I think that's fine. Okay. What do we find? A Painter Servant or Hushbringers. I guess we're probably going to play out this Hushbringer. Now, there is a very real cost for playing this Ancient Tomb out. So if they have a daze here, that's unfortunate for us. But we'll see how we can... Okay, so we've got the Orb. This is going to be the thing that's going to be very difficult for them to remove. So next turn we have a choice of what we do here. So we can play out the Painter, which will probably draw some removal. And we can play out the Dreadnought. And we'll have the Urza Saga ticking down. Okay, so let's see what we're playing here. So we have options here. So we can play out this Urza Saga so that we can start ticking it up next turn, which I quite like. Or we can play a white source. But if we're not playing a white spell this turn, we kind of want to sandbag our white source a little bit. Now the question is, which of these is the bait spell here? Like, they're both pretty good. And we're only baiting around Force of Will because Daze will catch the second one, whatever we play. So we're going to play out our Saga first. I think we're going to go for this Dreadnought. This Dreadnought is going to just win the game very quickly if it resolves. And it's going to require a Force of Will to interact with. Okay, and they pitch Brainstorm. So now we can follow this up with a Painter's Servant. We've got the days to go with this. That's pretty bad for us. Now, it looks like they're cracking a fetch, which is probably going to be some sort of brainstorm effect. Yeah, okay, so they're digging for a daze, or potentially a force here. So we don't want to name blue to give our opponent easier access to Force of Will. So we're probably just naming white here. Our stuff is white anyway, and it will make our opponent think and play around a Solitude. So in 2 turns' time, this will pop and give us a Grindstone. Now, they might be able to kill our Painted Servant, so that's something we're going to have to watch out for. Another Delver. These Delvers still not flipping is really doing us a favour here. Another Dreadnought. Interesting. So I think we're going to play out this and play out a Dreadnought. And then make an Urza Saga token. So we've kind of got our opponent coming and going on multiple axes here. Because this can go and find us a Grindstone. Or our Phyrexian Dreadnought can just beat them down with a Shadowspear on it next turn. The question is, which is harder for them to interact with? So Brazen Borrower is the only thing that interacts with the Dreadnought. So this is 9 damage, 10, 11, 12 if they find a bolt this turn. If they find 2 bolts, then we're dead. But that's not the most likely. Because they've got to draw off the bauble. Hence why they're drawing 2 cards this turn. Okay, if they've got a Ponder on top, that certainly helps them find another one of these effects. So if they don't have 2 mana available, we can just go and get the Shadowspear and put it on our Dreadnought, and that's going to win us the game. But if they do have 2 mana available, we have to play around the potential of a Brazen Borrower. Let's see what they do in their second main phase. Flood of Strats. They have 1 card in hand. So if we make one of these, it'll put us to 4. And if we tap this again, it'll put us to 2. So I think we're supposed to make this, because they can only bolt us once this turn. So this is lethal damage right now. So our opponent has to have something here. So what we can do is we can, if we draw a land, we can get the Grindstone. Actually, we can get the Grindstone either way, right? And if they use the card in their hand, like this, so they're lightning bolting this guy. Sure, I guess. So we'll activate, we'll add mana with this. We'll go searching for ourselves a Shadowspear. We will equip Shadowspear to our massive guy when they have no cards in hand. Yeah, okay, so we get to the Phyrexian win there, but if they had a Brazen Borrower that turn, and they use it to save themselves, then we get to Grindstone them anyway. So they're kind of, we had them dead on both fronts, depending on which removal had, depending on which way we kill them. So we just happened to kill them with the Phyrexian one. That felt pretty good. Now, a big part of that was our opponent not flipping their Delvers for 3 turns, and I'm not going to pretend I didn't get lucky on that front. But there we are. All right, sideboarding. So, what do we want here? Pithing Needle for Wasteland is something I'm interested in. The Torpor Orby stuff feels less good in this matchup. The Unlicensed Hearse is going to be good to keep their graveyard in check. These Blacksmith skills are good. I don't think we want to be trying to fight their creatures with Otherworldly Lights here. I don't think that's the way we want to go. So now we're in a case of what are we trimming to fit these things in? Because we're going to... We're probably getting battered down by Brotherhood's End at some point in this game. I don't think we're going to need a Haywire Mite. Now, if we board this out and they happen to have the Energy Flux, I think it's called, the amount of times we would have to have this at the exact right time in order for it to work is so low, because the Energy Flux is going to make it very difficult for us to get this into play anyway. So I think we can probably board that out. So now we'll look at these. So Ethersworn Canonist means our opponent can't keep cantripping into things, so I like Ethersworn Canonist in this matchup. Portable Hole can buy us some turns by getting rid of their little guys. Shadowspear and Soulguard Lantern are both good. The Dreadnoughts are things that are very hard for them to beat without Brotherhood's End. And then it's a case of these Hushbringers and Torpor Orbs aren't actually good against our opponent. So I think we can possibly trim some of these. So we're looking at trimming these. And we still need to fit 2 more cards in. So maybe we're trimming 1 Dreadnought. But the Dreadnought is such powerful. But maybe we don't have time for this. And we get rid of a Grindstone because we have the ability to... So we've kind of shaved a load of stuff here. So we'd rather have our 1 things that we do have be more durable than have more copies of them. Is kind of what we're going with that. Which I think makes sense. This does have 3 mana sources in, but they are not really the ones we want. I don't think we can keep this hand. It's basically a mulligan to 5 already, so... What about this hand? We're going to rely on the Once Upon a Time to do a little bit of work for us, but I think that's okay. We do have 2 of them, and we can keep this. In the face of Wastelands and stuff, I don't really want to pitch back lands, and I don't really want to pitch back Mox Opals either. So I think maybe the Once Upon a Time is kind of what we're hoping to throw out. I think we're probably putting back the Mox actually here. The Ancient Tomb can be a bit of a liability in terms of health, but I think that's fine. We'll pitch back the Mox Opal though. We have these mana sources that are much easier to keep going. Like a Wasteland can shut us off of Mox Opal and Ancient Den. Okay, so they've got a Delver. So we're going to draw. So we get the most amount of information before we cast our Once Upon a Time, and it also means we have the chance of double spelling, so it will overtax the days. That's why we do it now. So I don't know what land we want to play out until we've played this Once Upon a Time. So if they daze this, they daze this. But this is a free spell, so it's not the end of the world if it gets dazed. We are kind of looking for a bit of something here. Canonist or Fiddlebender? That's a very real choice, isn't it? Fiddlebender is going to be a lightning magnet. And it's going to let us tutor up the Torpor Orb to turn our Dreadnought on. So, right. Now we are playing this into a daze, because we can't really afford not to, because our opponent made a threat on turn 1, which is the power of Delver. Now if they're Force of Willingness, that's pretty good for us. We got 2 for 1 off of that Painter. Now if we get lucky, this won't flip, but chances are it will. It did not flip. Wowzers. Okay, our opponent's getting unlucky, and we're getting lucky, which is nice to see. So it's going to flip next turn unless they shuffle off this Ponder, and then it still might flip. They did not shuffle their library. Okay. Speed that they play that land makes me think that maybe it was the land they were looking for. Another Delver. Okay. That's a pretty real pair of threats they have there. And the Ponder is going to make them both flip. So we're under the gun in a big way here. And our land does hurt us if we use it. So I think what we're supposed to do is Once Upon a Time here. But it's going to take us 2 damage to do this. But it might mean that we can... so we're playing around days, but it also means we might be able to get the Dreadnought into play next turn. And Urza's Saga is very slow here. I think we are going to lose this game. We can't play out this Dreadnought right now. So these are both flipping because they stacked them. Wait. They didn't shuffle their Ponder, but they stacked it in a way that... Is that right? Did they chose not to shuffle their library. Yet they didn't hit with their Delvers. That seems very odd to me. Maybe the top of their deck was really good, but surely one of them was a thing. And they played the creature, so it wasn't that they were trying to manipulate. That's very weird to me. And they put a Murktide Regent to exile with the Expressive Iteration. So we've got a little reprieve there. A Fiddlebender. I think we're looking at playing this, and then playing a Fiddlebender without taking any pain from our land. But I think we are just too far behind here. Like, we might be able to leverage a little bit of Urza's Saga, but these guys have got to be flipping soon. And they represent basically a 2-turn clock, because being on 1 is not great for us. And we don't have anything to Fiddlebender. We don't have any 1-drops to Fiddlebender into the Torpor Orb to play our Dreadnought. Yep, so there's the iteration. I have to imagine our opponent has it. Again, our opponent's Delvers did not flip, so we're losing our Fiddlebender this turn. That's fine. I'd rather use the Bolt, because at least that's 1 less Bolt for our face, but Beggar's card we chooses. So we draw. We might have a choice of how we use our Ancient Tomb this turn, if at all. Yikes. Our opponent's got 2 cards in hand. We can play a Dreadnought around a daze. We can play Dreadnought Hushbringer around daze, or we can play as a Saga game. So if these flip and they hit us for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we're dead to Bolt if we tap our Ancient Tomb. Yikes. I think we are... Now we can also get stung here. If we play our Hushbringer and this is holding up a Lightning Bolt, and they just kill our Hushbringer in response, then we're a little bit in trouble. We're a lot in trouble, I think, at that point. But our opponent had an untapped land in their last turn and didn't crack it at end of turn to kill our Fiddlebender, which makes me suspect that our opponent doesn't have a removal spell. If we play this out, it's not going to be big enough to impact the game substantially enough. So I think we have to play out the Hushbringer here. Now we can play out Fiddlebender and a Dreadnought, but I don't know if that's necessary. If we take 2, then we take 6. Okay, Force of Will, pitching Brazen Borrower. Okay, so now we have a choice. So if we play the Fiddlebender this turn, we can get the... We take 2, but we can get the Torpor Orb by getting a 1-drop from this and sacking it. And it also means that if we draw a different 1-drop, we might be able to get a Painter win. So I think we are priced into playing the Oswald and taking damage this turn. Our opponent has no cards in hand. So if they have a Lightning Bolt on top of their library, then we're going to lose the game. But we might be forced into a horrible getting the Shadowspear here. Okay, so what are they putting on top? Expressive Iteration here, or Unholy Heat? Expressive Iteration by the looks of it. Sure. So this is going to flip their Delvers, and they just need to find a Lightning Bolt off the top 4 cards of their deck here. Top 3 cards of their deck, sorry. There's the Iteration. Lightning Bolt kills us. Murktide. Okay, Brainstorm. So they got one card in hand from the iteration and they're brainstorming now. Got Lightning Bolt. Dragon's Rage Channeler. Okay, so we're not dead on the spot. But yeah, so we got one more turn here. Okay, they put a Volcanic Island into a bit. So we probably need to try and paint a Servant combo here. Quite how we're going to manage to do that is difficult. Because this is only sorcery speed. This sacrifices stuff. Otherwise, we could do a whole bunch more shenanigans. Alright, so drawing Painter's Servant would be really nice for about now. A Grindstone. So this gets us a Grindstone. This turns it into a Painter. So that's 2 mana to get Painter's Servant into play. 1 mana for this and 3 mana. Okay, yeah, so we have the win here with the Painter's Servant, I think. If I can do maths. Doesn't matter which one of these we get. As long as it's a 1-drop that doesn't immediately die, I don't think it matters. We may as well get the slight value off of the Soul Guide Lantern, just in case. I don't think it matters, because if something goes wrong, we're just dead anyway. We'll just exile this Force of Will. So we need to see if this resolves first, otherwise we have to change tact slightly. Okay, so that resolved. That's good. So this sacrifices this. I'm going to get ourselves Painted Servant. Yeah, okay, so they know we're getting Painted Servant, and we got 3 mana there to grind them out. Sure. If they had the days for this, then we still have the land backed up. So we played it out this way in case our opponent showed us the days. So we're more likely to bait the action out of our opponent's hand, potentially. But yeah, okay, so that felt pretty good. Our opponent did not flip their Delvers very well in both games, though, so I won't lie and say we just absolutely smashed in stuff. We got lucky. We drew half of our combo on the last turn we needed to, and our opponent didn't flip Delvers because we should have been dead a turn earlier. Possibly 2 turns earlier, our opponent pondered and didn't flip their Delvers when they had 2 Delvers in play, which seems ridiculous to me. But all right, let's go into round 2. So this hand, we're on the play. This hand starts churning out Urza Saga tokens as early as turn 2, which I am down for, so I will keep this. Now, if we get hit by a Wasteland, that's going to be bad for us, but here we are. Play this one out. And we're going to play out the Grindstone now, just so we have more food for our big guys later on. We don't need to play this one out just yet. We can play it next turn when it'll be live, although if we play it out, we no longer have cards that can be discarded from our hand. So I don't mind that. Let's play that out, actually. And turn 1 Thylias and things we don't have to worry about. This seems alright to me. So next turn, we can play this, and we can make Urza Saga tokens without taking any damage off of our Ancient Tomb. Now, our opponent's played a Wasteland, which is the one thing I said I didn't really want to see. So, not great for us. We're a little bit all in with these lands. So, maybe I could have mulliganed this one. Another Mox Opal. That's certainly not the one, is it? If we play out the Ancient Tomb, we might bait another Wasteland. And we'd rather our opponent does that and let us try and draw some action. And if we play out our white sources, our opponent knows what we're doing. But at the moment, we look like a red painter deck, because that's the most common painter deck, especially with Ancient Tombs in it. So maybe we can play out a Wasteland again from our opponent if they have one. A Tiger. Okay. A Crop Rotation. Probably not going to be amazing for us, whatever they find here. A Wasteland. Okay, yeah. So we are getting the Wasteland out here. Excellent. This is a 2 for 1. I'm pretty happy about that, because they spent this and the land just for our Wasteland, for our thing that we wanted to get Wasteland. So if we play out another one, do you reckon they'll Crop Rotate again? Oh, wow. This is 1-2 to play this. 1-2. So we're 1 mana off being able to do it. So if we play it next turn, we can Grindstone our opponent out next turn, but we will need the Ancient Tomb for that. So maybe we're supposed to play out the Plains here. And then our opponent gets to play a 1-drop, and then we get to have 3 mana here, and then 1 mana for this, 1 mana of this. So we have to play our Painted Servant out first, and then tap a Mox, crack, and then play the second one. Alright, this feels like an okay position to be in. Yavimaya. So one of the things we have to think about here is an Endurance, but we'll get 2 for 1 if we do that. Okay, so we will play this out. We will take 2 damage, we'll play out Painted Servant. I don't know what to name here, because we haven't seen that much of our opponent's deck. They could have a Solitude in there, so I think I'm going to name Black here, because no instant speed black stuff can really mess us up, I don't think. Whereas Solitude or Endurance or Force of Will can. I'd rather not give them a Fury potentially, so we're going to name Black. So we're going to tap this one for Black. We're going to play this one out. We've got a Crop Rotation coming in. We do have a Crop Rotation coming in. So this could be for a white source to then plow our guy. It's not. What are they going to cast for red? Oh, they just have lightning bolts in their main deck. Interesting. I guess. So the other option we had there was waiting another turn and trying to do it. But we did get a 2-for-1 with that. So, alright. I was more expecting to see things like punishing fire from our opponent rather than the lightning bolt. But I think we possibly could have played around that. The problem is all our lands are wastelandable. So if we do that play, we end up in a similar situation. Another Grindstone. Now, our opponent's deck almost certainly features some number of copies of Life from the Loam. So manually grinding our opponent here is not going to help us out. But our opponent still only has one man. Well, they're going to have 2 lands in play after this turn. We've got through some amount of crop rotations. Now, if this is going to be a Life from the Loam, then we're in a little bit of trouble. It is a Life from the Loam. Okay. So we have a choice here. We can try and grindstone our opponent at end of turn just to try and get through their deck a little bit and maybe see more of their cards, because I think we're just going to get Wasteland locked out, so I'd like to have a little bit more information about what they're playing. Because they already have Wastelands to lock us out, I don't actually hate that. So we're going to do this and see if we can just see some more cards of our opponent's deck. Because they already have the Life from the Loam, we can just see a little bit more of their deck. If we speed them up to getting Marit Lage, like, that's probably not going to matter because we're going to be losing 1 land every turn anyway. Let's see what the Doctor orders. A Hushbringer. Well, this is a creature that can attack, so we can play this one out. We use these sources. I don't know if we want to play this other Grindstone out. I think we just leave it for now. We can play it out later if we need it for Oswald or as a Saga tokens. But we're going to lose a lot of our lands here. Now, if our opponent spends their time doing that, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world because they haven't shown us an exploration effect. So if they're spending 2 mana a turn to destroy one of our lands, that's basically their entire turn every turn to destroy a land. Now, because they already have the second Wasteland, they don't actually need to play another one just yet, which is awkward for us. So it's every other turn. So we'll see if they have something here. I'm suspecting a Punishing Fire from our opponent. A Savannah. Is it worth playing the Savannah out? Or we probably want to conceal the green. We do have a Mox Opal for green, but we're probably going to be losing Metalcraft soon. Alright, let's go to attacks. Can't think of any 2 mana instant creatures that they can play in their deck. It's probably going to be Endurance is the big flash threat we have to worry about. And then we hold the Savannah, so we just have a guaranteed way of making green mana for the Once Upon a Time if we draw it. We could do with drawing... I imagine they're going to struggle to beat a Phyrexian Dreadnought. And I also imagine they're going to not have a great time against... are we just going to grind and see more of their deck? I hate this play. It's very defeatist for me to grind them here because I can grind them into like a potential combo that they can then play. Or dear, oh dear. Very defeatist play. We're not going to do it anyway. The window's gone anyway because we don't have the artifact land. But I don't think we want to do it anymore. But since we found this threat, maybe... So Phyrexian Dreadnought's going to be very hard for them to answer. And I think the... Okay, so we have this actually. This is good. Let's play this out. We can cast this for green, white. Because we didn't play out the Grindstone, we don't actually have Mox Opal now, so that's a slight issue for us. Okay, so we have a Painted Servant. Let's put that in our hand and scare our opponent a little bit. So an Ancient Tomb off the top. As long as, well, it depends if they Wasteland. I imagine they have to Life from the Loam this turn. But if they don't, then an Ancient Tomb off the top gives us Painted Servant. But again, they could have Endurance. They could have a removal spell for our Painted Servant. Wasteland, sure. Goodbye, Savannah. Yeah. So, Phyrexian Dreadnoughts, please. Alright, now, if we attack our opponent first, we'll see if they have any removal spells. Because they're going to cast it on the guy in response to our Dreadnought if they have one anyway. So what we can do is we can cast the Grindstone first, and then use the Mox Opal to cast the Dreadnought. And that way we're going to guarantee ourselves Metalcraft. So I think this is the better play. And we got a Punishing Fire for our Hushbringer. They do not. Okay, so our clock has dramatically increased, and red removal spells are not going to kill this guy. So we're in a pretty good spot. Okay, so they Life from the Loam. Maze of Ith. So that's the thing that can shut down our Dreadnought for a while, which is a little bit awkward. But they know we have a Painted Servant in hand, so they've got this constant threat of getting Painted Servant out of the game. So this is probably going to be the Maze of Ith. Yeah, there it is. Could be a bit of a long one, this. What have you got for us, deck? Another Phyrexian Dreadnought, please. Can't get them all. Right. So we're going to attack with both of our guys. Yep. We suspected they would do that. Get a whole 1 point of lifelink damage in. So we can actually survive a Merit Lage hit, which might become relevant soon. I am going to play out this Painted Servant, because that means next turn we have the combo sewn up. So we don't want to name green for Endurance. I think it's probably safe to name black again here. I don't think we're going to have to name anything with white. Let's just name black. It makes the cards look cooler at the end of the day. So we're not going to play out the Savannah, because obviously it can be wastelanded. So this and these two give us the Grindstone mana for next turn. So we are getting there. The lack of prismatic endings in the format at the moment, due to the initiative deck jumping the curve, making prismatic ending a worse removal spell, has actually meant Phyrexian Dreadnought is better than it has been for a little while. Because otherwise, it used to just be getting killed for 1 mana all the time with prismatic endings. Yes, they can plow it, but plow can kill any creature. Let's see. Drawing a basic would be pretty good here. Oswald Fiddlebender. Is that worth our time to play? I don't think so. I think we play out this. So we have the ability to grindstone our opponent instant speed. So if our opponent ever taps down to do anything, we can grind them. This turn we can attack with everything because they're not going to be able to make an Urza Saga taken this turn. They don't have Haywire, so it's going to be harder for them to assemble the Dark Depths combo immediately. Sure. Because we're ahead here, we don't need to tap our Grindstone right now. Endurance. They're casting an Endurance. This is interesting for us here. So let's resolve. This doesn't actually get its trigger. And our opponent's tapped down. So I think we've won this one. Yep, we get to see our opponent's graveyard here. So we're going to lose our Painted Servant, but our opponent is going to draw a card and die. So we've got Beseju, Richstone Port, Mox Opal. Okay, this is a pretty stock lands list. I can't see anything too weird. Sylvan Library isn't something they always have, but it's not a surprise to see it in there. So our opponent's got 6 cards in hand. Okay, they're killing our Hushbringer. Okay, so this means they have another Endurance in hand. So there's only 1 Lightning Bolt, 2 Lightning Bolt in their graveyard. No Minsk and Boo, I can see. So our opponent has to cast an Endurance in their upkeep or die. But then I get to untap and grind them again. So, oh yeah, okay. The writing is on the wall there. Sure. Oh, they didn't even cast the Endurance there. So how many Endurances do we see? 1, 2, 3. So they might only be running with 3. Cool. Excellent. So we managed to beat the lands first games. So, Unlicensed Hearse is going to be real good here. The Surgical Extractions are definitely going to have some pretty reasonable text on them. The March of Otherworldly Lights are going to be able to take out explorations and things like that. This Blacksmith skill will save our lands and do all sorts of other things. This Pithing Needle will name Wasteland and keep us going. So we have a lot of cards that are good. Ethersworn Canonist, not great in this matchup. They're mainly just doing things with lands, so I don't think that's really going to get us a lot of joy. The Shadowspear is fine because we might have to race, and we can certainly do that with what we have here. The Oswald Fiddlebender is pretty bad against lands because they can just shoot up Karakas as and when they see fit. So it's just a dead draw that I don't really want in my deck right now. Then it leaves us with 3 more cuts if we want to include these things. Now obviously boarding out the Fiddlebender means it's harder to find the hearse, but we are boarding in 3 pieces of graveyard hate, so that should be fine. Engineering Explosives is something we might have to worry about. Portable Hole is pretty reasonable here. I think we might just be trimming on stuff, depending on what I think is the weakest. So I think we're probably getting rid of a Torpor Orb. The Grindstone is easiest to find, but because our Urza Sagas are going to be in danger, shall we say, I'm not that convinced we need that. So we could be shaving on some Once Upon a Time, because the green's going to be harder to play underneath like wastelands and things. So I think this is probably where we want to be. It makes sense in my mind. The logic is there. So we still have the Haywire Mite because it is colourless, but we might be able to activate the green. But the Once Upon a Time is basically going to be a 0 mana spell or stuck in our hand a lot of the time. Or force us to sandbag lands, which isn't always a problem, but it's fine. What does this hand do? This hand plays an Urza Saga game, so it loses to Wasteland. Where have I seen that before? This forces our opponent to have a Wasteland on turn 1. And if we draw a Torpor Orb at any point, we get to go. And our Urza Sagas will be pretty big. But we have to basically dodge 4 Wasteland and 4 crop rotation. Yikes. Now the problem is our hands are always going to be weak to Wasteland. That is one of the issues that we have with this deck. Because, you know, you can't build a deck to beat everything. So you've got to have weaknesses somewhere. Do I want to just try playing Saga game here? We have a lot of mana, so we might just be able to, like, randomly, like, combo them as well. So we can keep this, I think. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. You only need 6 mana to play both halves of your combo and go off with it. A Yavimaya Cradle of Growth. Okay, have they got an exploration to follow up with? Looks like they're paying costs. Yes, they do. Okay, so they might play Thespian Stage. So they could make a turn 2 Marit Lage if they've got Dark Depths and another land in hand. So we're going to have to sandbag this Karakas for this next turn, I think. This is a good one to find. Let's cast that mana cost. A basic Plains or a Painter's Servant. Painter's Servant is something I'm interested in here. So if we play this out, that's 1 mana. 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we play this out and the Grindstone, we can kill them next turn if they go for the Marit Lage combo. Yeah, let's have green mana, why not? Okay, so if they play the lands required, we might have to play a Karakas here. Because they could just endurance their own library, so we can't actually get through with the Grindstone kill. So let's see what our opponent's going to play. If you're familiar with my channel, you know last month I played an awful lot of Dark Depths decks. Okay, a Blast Zone. So this can blow up our Grindstone. But our opponent is representing enough mana that they can crop rotate for a Dark Depths and kill us. Which isn't really where I want to be right now. We're kind of in a bit of a bind. Okay, they're tapping their things down. This is interesting to me. Okay, they're activating the Blast Zone now to blow up our Grindstone. And their own exploration. That's a win for us in my books. They're going to surgically extract our Grindstone. That's less of a win in my books, truth be told. But, okay, so we're very firmly on the Dark Depths plan. On the Urza's Saga plan. This one could be a little bit of a tricky one to win. But without our Grindstones, we do still have some Torpor Orb type stuff to get our Dreadnought up and running. And we do have Urza's Saga to try and beat down with. Now, if our opponent has a Life from Malome in their hand, that's going to be a bit awkward for us. But they are stuck with 1 land a turn because they've blown up their own exploration. So, swings and roundabouts, right? Grindstone has entered the Exile Zone, sure. And they did find all 3 of them. Opponent's down to 2 cards in hand. We have a lot more cards in hand. So that's nice. We don't have to worry about getting attacked by Marit Lage this turn either. Oh, that's a very good draw. So we can name Thespian Stage, or we can name Wasteland. These are options. So what we're doing is we're definitely making an Urza Saga token this turn. I think we're probably playing out our Lotus Petal right now and casting this. Now it does remove one of our things. We don't need the big glut of mana now because we're not going to be able to combo our opponent. The question is, do I think we can beat... They've only got 2 cards in hand. I think we're better off naming Wasteland here. I've bought my ticket. I'm going to take my ride. So there is an argument for playing out Petal in case they have Chalice, but I don't think they're bringing Chalice against us when they have Force of Vigors and things anyway. The Chalices that they have are more for combo, like really fast combo decks, and we're sort of like in terms of legacy, we're a relatively slow combo deck. Okay, so we need to hold our Karakas up in case they have crop rotation now. Let's make a lad. Are they copying our Urza Saga? Sure. So that means we're not getting hit with a 2020 this turn. So our opponent is unlikely to have a crop rotation unless they're saving it for something. So we're going to get another guy. We have choices here. We can either go and get ourselves a Shadowspear, or we can get ourselves a Soulguide Lantern. Or, hold on, let me... exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. Hells yeah, let's get this Haywire Mite. So we'll play this out, attack, and then we will Haywire Mite there as a Saga. Love this little guy. Boom. Out you go as a Saga. And they didn't have a crop rotation because they would have crop rotated away if they did. So that was a pretty good play for us. So we've got 8 power in play. We can make it 10 power by playing the Painter's Servant out. Okay, a Wasteland. This doesn't do anything because of the Pithing Needle. But if they've drawn a crop rotation, we need to be able to Karakas away our opponent's Marit Lage token. Now our opponent can play an Endurance, but our creatures are going to be bigger than Endurance, so that's fine. Ooh, making me do lots of thinking. I'm really tired, but this deck is a lot of fun. Alright, what do you got for us, deck? A Surgical Extraction. I don't really care about that. So we're going to play out our Karakas first. And then we'll play this out. We can save life here by tapping these for green. We're playing this pre-combat because this pumps our guy. Now, they might have some sort of random like Virtue's Ruin type effect, so I don't really want to name white here. Because of the other stuff we've seen, they're probably not bringing in Pyroblast as well. We're just going to name black, I think, is the safest here. And, again, it makes all our stuff look really cool. So there's a crop rotation for... No? 2 mana. Beseiju on that guy. Sure, I'll take out Plains. I'll have that. We could have the Savannah, but, again, our opponent could get rid of this, and we'd rather have the ability to not die to Wastelands. feel quite far ahead in this matchup right now. But again, there's a bunch of cards that our opponent can have. We can do stuff with. We have the Surgical Extraction, so we can at least shut down the Life from Malone. The question is, what if they target Life from Malone, target Boseiju? I think we just get rid of the Boseiju rather than the waiting for the Life from Malone. There is an option for getting rid of the Blast Zone as well. But that is basically 2 of our opponent's turns in a row. Just to blow up Pithing Needle. Okay, so there's the Dark Depths. So if we lose our Karakas, we lose the game. That's the situation our opponent has put us in. Not the best. But maybe we'll draw like a Torpor Orb or something. Or a Hushbringer. Hushbringer's good because it can block for 1 turn against the Marit Lage. Portable Hole. Does that do anything? Not right now. So I think we're on the sending our guys sideways and hope we can do that 2 turns in a row. If we attack with this and they have an Endurance, that's bad for us. So we can attack with just this guy. So if we attack with them both, they can Endurance this guy. And it shrinks the amount of damage they take. And this is 2 turn clock anyway. Okay, so there is the Endurance that we thought they would have. I'm going to shuffle our graveyard in. Or they're going to do nothing. They should probably do nothing. Yeah, okay, they're doing nothing. So this time we're rewarded for attacking correctly. Opponent is in top deck mode in land, so that's not too shabby for us. Okay, so this guy's just going under the bus to buy them a turn. Makes sense. They're obviously hoping to catch our opponent's 7, but we didn't give them the opportunity. Now we can surgically extract their Endurance if we want to, but again, I don't think it's worth doing. I think we're better off saving that for some sort of Life from Malone type shenanigans. If our opponent plays a 1-mana thing, we can play the Portable Hole, which will also pump our construct. A Rishadan Port. This is a problem. So they have 1, 2. Okay, so we're going to get killed. So we need to draw Blacksmith skill here to buy ourselves a turn. Okay, I think we're losing this game now. Okay, so they didn't do it in the upkeep. We don't have enough life to survive against a Marit Lage token. So I think what we're trying to do now is bait our opponent into getting Portable Hold. Because they might just try and get the value of tapping down our Karakas, making 20/20 and killing our guy. Let's see if our opponent is greedy. Doesn't look like they're going for it. This is a pity. Float a white and represent a plow or something. Much rather well they like would have been a good draw as well. So they're making the Dark Depths now. And then they get to hit us with it. Our opponent's quite low on clock, so I'm going to let them go through the motions, I think. I assume they're going to go for it. There is a world where they hold back on blocks here, but I think that's so tenuous that it's not worth doing. Oh, they thought about it though. There was that moment where they thought, sure. Back to the sideboard. So, I still don't think we want Ensnaring Bridge to stop the 20/20. I just don't think that's worth doing. I think we have these March Fatherworldly Lights, so it's just going to be better. They're more flexible, and they won't slow down our own way of beating our opponents down. Blacksmith skill could have been useful in that situation. They should have tapped down our thing in our upkeep in case we drew something good. Do I feel I want a Torpor Orb effect in this other Torpor Orb effect or these Oswald in? I don't think so. I think seven Torpor Orb effects is enough. Like, that Phyrexian Dreadnought did sit in our hand for that whole game and didn't look great, truth be told. But I think that's fine. We've seen the Blast Zone as well, so it's not as if they don't have an answer for it. I think we just resubmit again. With a Torpor Orb or something, this hand's possibly keepable, but I don't think we can keep this, right? So we can Blacksmith skill away their first Wasteland, but then we spent 2 cards just to do that. We might as well just mulligan for a better hand. This hand doesn't really go anywhere. It needs pieces. It doesn't have a basic. Doesn't have either part of our combo. Has this sort of Blanco Dreadnought in. I think we should mulligan again. Christ. If we can draw a land, this hand's great. But I don't think we can keep this one either. It is a basic, though. Is it worth keeping this land with a basic, or should I go to 4? 4 is so little. I think we have to keep this and get lucky. So probably binning this. Like, this into double Dreadnought is going to be good. Maybe we're supposed to bin the Torpor Orb here because the Unlicensed Heirs is going to keep their graveyard in check and be large anyway. Yikes. This is easily killed with their removal spells, though. But this is easily killed with Force of Vigors. Is it greedy to keep both Dreadnoughts? I think we have to get greedy, right? We're on a multi 5. We've already said we're trying to get lucky and draw a land here. So, there's a lot of ways that this House of Cards can fall apart. If we draw a land, we're probably playing the Hearse rather than the Hushbringer, maybe, depending on what our opponent deploys on turn 1. Because we kind of need our Hushbringer to be alive when we cast our Dreadnoughts. So maybe we wait for... So we could draw an Ancient Tomb, that would be an excellent draw for us, because we can just go Hushbringer and a Dreadnought in one turn, and then our opponent's kind of probably going to spend resources dealing with the Dreadnought rather than the Hushbringer, and then we can follow up with another one. But we are behind in this game. They're pitching a Wasteland, okay? So that means they've probably got a Life from the Loam here. So we're going to really struggle to beat that unless we can get our Unlicensed Hearse down before they start casting Life from the Loam. If they have it, they probably just cast it now anyway. Another Mox die, okay. And a Wasteland. Interesting. So a land to play this Unlicensed Hearse would be lovely. Painter's Servant. Okay, so we kept a speculative hand on the basis that if we draw a land, I think we can win with this hand, whereas I didn't think a 4 would be able to beat the deck that's built around grinding your opponent's resources down. Our opponent kept 6. Their deck has Force of Vigor, Wasteland, Rishdam Port, Life from the Loam. I think we were right to keep this hand, but I think we're going to lose. The chance of us winning on a 4-card hand just seemed very low to me against this deck. Like, if this wasn't a basic, maybe it's different, but I think keeping the basic is too important. Alright, we're just going to stare at each other. At least they don't have an engine in play yet. There's no Life from the Loam, and they don't have like a Sylvan Library, and there's no as a Saga as of yet. They would have cast it if they had it. Okay, this is, they're going to make a Marrowlage, they're going to kill us. Yeah, sure, we're just dead. Alright, that one was less good, unfortunately. Felt like we were ahead for a lot of that second game, but the Rishdam Port off the top was just too much for us. We needed another turn. So we could have named the Thespin Stage with the Pithing Needle earlier, but I think then we just lose all our lands to Wasteland, so that's not going to win us the game either. So I think we made the correct plays there. The Dreadnought sitting in our hand the whole game was an issue, which is certainly an issue that this deck can have. So we basically had -1 cards from the start of that game in game 2. This game, like, we just mulliganed to oblivion and we lost. We had to keep the 1 land basic that goes off with the second land. I don't think you throw that back on 5 against lands. But doesn't always get there, and that was one of those times. So, alright, let's go on to the next round. We're going to keep this. Our hand just needs a bit more mana, and then we're good to go. We've got both halves of our combo. We've also got a thing that so we can set up some Dreadnoughts pretty soon. And we have a Fiddlebender to fall back on. So we can keep this. Again, we lost a die roll, which is, I think I've won like 3 die rolls this week, which is something like that. So maybe next week will be my win all the die rolls game. Our opponent has mulliganed to 5. This makes me suspect my opponent is probably more of a combo deck looking for very specific pieces to execute their game plan rather than just a keepable hand that a lot of the non-combo decks can just keep on 6 or 7 usually. Also, our opponent has a great username of Vendilion Miscleek. Big fan. Mystic Sanctuary. Okay, so our opponent might be a Delver player who just got unlucky. Interesting. So we're going to play this. Do you want to daze this or not? With your Mystic Sanctuary. By all means, take it back to your hand. So one of the things we were looking for in our hand was mana. We have just found some mana. So I think we are going to take this Ancient Tomb. I'm going to play this out. And I'm going to play this into daze. Reason being, if our opponent wants to daze their Mystic Sanctuary, they're going to be so far behind. Because we get to accelerate with an Ancient Tomb next turn. Sure, we got it. I think they've made the same calculation. The fact they've thought on it does make me think they have a daze, though. They could have a Force, I guess, but we can't play around the Force other than just, you know, smashing our heads into it. So if we draw a Dreadnought next turn, we can do Hushbringer plus Dreadnought. Now, they can daze the Dreadnought, which is, you know, a little bit annoying, but it means they're going to be using up some of their permission, and the following turn we can play Painter Grindstone, right? So that's 3 mana here, 4. No, we're close there. Let's see what we draw. A Portable Hole. That's not really what we wanted. So we can play this Canonist out so our opponent can't cantrip and play threats. And we can play this around a daze. So I like this play. Does leave 1 mana in our pool, but I don't really care too much about that. Now they can still play a Mishra's Bauble and a creature because this is non-artifact spells. It can't be cast. Alright. So we need to draw another Ancient Tomb or a Petal or a Mox Opal. These will get us the ability to grindstone our opponent next turn, which is something I can certainly be a fan of. Now we have an Oswald Fiddlebender that we can deploy soon, and we can use that to get some bits and pieces going if necessary. We don't have any 0 mana artifacts to turn into Phyrexian Dreadnoughts though. Opponent's played another Misty Rainforest. Maybe they're not Delver and they're more like Show and Tell. That's certainly a possibility. Let's play this one out. Let's see if you've got yourselves a counterspell. Because if they don't, they can't cast a spell for the rest of the game. Excellent. We're going to name... Oh, now if they have Emeralds in their deck, though, that's an issue for us. So, what are we doing here? Guess we name probably white here. If our opponent is Sneak and Show, they can't get Death Touch on their guy if they play an Ice Fang. If they play a spell, we can grind them out. But the issue with that is our opponent might be able to have an Emrakul in their deck, so they'll just shuffle it in. So we're going to have to play the Oswald, maybe, and then we're going to have to cycle away the Lotus Petal for a Soul Guide Lantern. So, yeah, bit of a bind. Let's see what our opponent does here. Savannah. Okay, that doesn't make me think our opponent is playing Show and Tell anymore. Which means next time our opponent casts a spell, we grind their entire library out, because the Ethersworn Canonist will protect us from removal spells. Unless they have an artifact removal spell, which is going to be sorcery speed, so we should be fine. We don't need to do anything here. So we can play out an Ancient Tomb here. Play out this Fiddlebender for green and white, so we can cover ourselves. We don't need to attack our Ethersworn Canonist into our opponent, because they could have an Endurance here. And if they've got another Endurance in hand, they can use it in their upkeep, so we'll lose our Ethersworn Canonist and we lose this sort of soft lock we've got going on. So we don't need to attack now. And next turn we can Fiddlebend this Petal into a Soul Guide Lantern. And that way, if our opponent does have an Endurance or an Emrakul, we beat it. Now, we could have played the Hushbringer that turn, and that does a similar thing. But we can play the Hushbringer and the thing next turn. Alright, so we can cast this. So we're going to pay... We need to keep 3 mana up. So we play both of these. We play with this and this, and then we do the white. So we can't... Well, I think we just play this turn. So this is... Actually, no. I think we just sacrifice this first. And we'll sacrifice this artifact. And we'll get ourselves a Soul Guide Lantern. We will exile our opponent's Brainstorm. Okay. So now we can attack safe in the knowledge that if they cast an Endurance, we can exile their graveyard. And we don't actually have to do anything. Our opponent is locked out of the game here. Next turn we can play the Hushbringer as well, which can give us more of a clock. So if we just activate this and our opponent has a removal spell, we lose the game. So we have no need to mess around with that. We might also get to see more cards from our opponent's deck. There's an artifact, so we can play this one out. We can also play this guy out. So white, white. Then we can play this additional guy out. So now a removal spell isn't enough either. We have 3 mana here. Our opponent is dead. The first one named white, so this one named white too. We go to attacks. So this one, this one, this one. It doesn't really matter because if they play a spell, we mill their library. And we can exile their graveyard in response to an Emrakul trigger if that's something they have. Which I suspect it isn't, but we can play around it for free, so why wouldn't we? What do we lose to here? Maybe like a Channel Boseiju is pretty good against us. Okay. We don't lose to Channel Boseiju, but it's pretty good against us. Also, if our opponent plays a Pithing Needle, we have to react to it. Actually, no, we don't because we have the Portable Hole, but then if they have the Pithing Needle... Oh, no, there's a lot of things, and I'm not going to think about it now. I'm just going to sideboard because I'm really tired. So we don't really know anything about our opponent's deck here. We saw white mana, we saw blue mana. So I'm expecting maybe like Hot Bant or something. So these Blacksmith skills are probably going to be quite useful. And the Unlicensed Hearse might be useful too. So these are the things I'm considering. Again, if they are some sort of like 4-color sneak build, we're going to want these Soul Guide Lanterns. If they have Uro, we're going to want Soul Guide Lanterns. So we're going to keep the Soul Guide Lanterns in. We probably don't need all of these Fiddlebenders because our opponents are white decks. So they probably have a Karakas in because it's just free to have Karakas in. Haywire Mite might be useful as well. Portable Hole, we didn't see anything. So maybe we don't need the Portable Hole. We have the Haywire Mite, which does a similar thing but also beats down. Maybe we'll regret that, I'm not sure. And we'll probably take out one of these Once Upon a Times. I have to imagine that these Torpor Orbs are going to be good against Endurances and stuff anyway. Alright. Until our opponent shows us something more, this is about the best I think we can submit. This seems fine. We can keep this. Now, if our opponent has Uro, then they can benefit off of our Torpor Orb in a big way. So that's something to keep an eye out for. So we can play this one out. We can play this one out. And we want this Torpor Orb. This Torpor Orb feels like a weird one. It's a bit of a bait spell. We can play out the Painted Servant and then hold up the Blacksmith skill on it, but I think we should just be playing this out. It's a bait spell a little bit, and it means that we can play a Phyrexian Dreadnought game if this gets down. And it means next turn we can play a white spell and hold up Blacksmith's skill without losing our thing. So we can play like an Oswald maybe. So if we can Oswald, we can turn this Lotus Petal ideally into a Grindstone. And then we just need a little bit more mana and then we're good to grind. Okay, so it's looking like Hot Band, but we'll see. Another Painted Servant. So this is a good additional bait spell if we want it. I think we'll play this one out. Now we're taking a bit of damage from our Dress Down. This doesn't work, I don't believe. Right? Does it work? I can't remember. It might work actually. So our opponent might be on Dreadnoughts as well if they're running Dress Downs. Okay, so this doesn't actually work. Okay, interesting to know. So we have something to Fiddlebender away. It's good to know. Okay, so they could be on the like Rugnaut. We'll have to just see how this turn transpires. So this isn't naming a colour now, which is annoying. So we're gonna play our Oswald Fiddlebender next turn. It'd be really nice if we drew a Phyrexian Dreadnought, and we get to use all of our mana from our Ancient Tomb. So we'll play the Fiddlebender, and then we can Fiddlebender away the Servant, but it doesn't turn into anything, so we don't have any 3-drops. Because this is much lower to the ground, and it has to get something that costs more. You can't just get something that costs less, otherwise you could really do some damage. But I suppose we've got the other Painted Servant in hand anyway. A Savannah. We don't really want to play Painted Servants into 2 open mana now we've seen the Dress Down. An Ethersworn Canonist. I think I would rather have this Oswald. So we're playing this around a days and we're holding up Blacksmith's skill. Getting in the red zone, Painted Servant, because you're certainly not doing anything else this game since you didn't name anything. Expressive Iteration. Yep, good card is good. Sure, so Tundra was the exiled card, and they've played it. 2 mana here. We got Prismatic Ending. Cast Blacksmith spell, targeting this. Paying white. Is this any good? Let's see. Okay, so we're getting a Force of Will. So we're getting a 2 for 1 out of it. That's not the end of the world. So we are losing our Fiddlebender. Our opponent paid a relatively high price though. Wowzers, trousers. Let's try and play a Phyrexian Dreadnought. Now our opponent has used a Prismatic Ending. We know they have Mystic Sanctuary in their deck, so they can put it on top of their library if they need to. And they might also have Brotherhood's End in their deck, which would be very mean and cruel because it would kill our Phyrexian Dreadnought. And it would also kill our Ancient Den. It would just end the game pretty quickly. So let's see. Terminus. Oh, okay, they just had Terminus on top. Yeah, I guess so. So our opponent doesn't get to cast another spell this turn. Actually, no, they do because it's on the bottom, so the ability won't there. It doesn't really matter what order these are in because we're probably going to shuffle before we get there. Off of an Urza Saga or something. Okay, so we are quite far behind in this game right now. Soul Guide Lantern isn't the worst though, but our life total is taking an absolute beating right now. I think we play out this Soul Guide Lantern. So they're going to get Mystic Sanctuary and put the Expressive Iteration on top of their library now. Yep. Pretty bad news for us. We will get rid of this Prismatic Ending, I think. And then we will cast this one. This at least slows our opponent down and it makes Expressive Iteration a lot worse of a Magic the Gathering card. Now, they can find a land off the Expressive Iteration and play that. But again, it's going to take their whole turn. Okay, so they've got a plow. Sure. Opponent's got 2 cards in hand. And they've got an Expressive Iteration on top of their library. So they are firmly in the driving seat right now. But with more mana and a little bit of a grindstone, we can kill our opponent. Karakas. Sure. Our opponent does have Karakas as we suspected, which is why I brought it down on Oswald's. Another Torpor Orb. Is it worth playing another Torpor Orb? I don't think it is. Is it worth sacrificing our Soul Guide Lantern? If our opponent's win condition is Uro, then I think we need to keep the Soul Guide Lantern around. If our opponent's win condition is going to be Minsk and Boo this game, then, well, yeah, we're just going to get Minsk and Boo. I don't think we play out the Painted Servant just yet. Maybe we want to have a Blacksmith skill to protect it. Or try and double spell, at least, on our turn. At some point, we might have to crack the Soul Guide Lantern to draw a card. A Wasteland. Okay, we're going to have to crack our Soul Guide Lantern pretty sharpish. Okay, that's not the one I would have cracked if I were you, but fair enough. Okay, so we have to draw a card here. We are very much under the gun. We've just drawn a 1-mana 12/12 though, so that's not a bad start. Let's play this out so we can play around days. I don't think our opponent's running days if they're hot banned, but can we have Phyrexian Dreadnought, please? It's a big lad. Okay, we're getting hard cast Force of Will on this. Sure. We're going to have to wait for that at some point. Okay, our opponent's just passing with 3 cards in hand, so probably have to grind through another counter spell. This is pretty good though. Our opponent's wasteland is gone. I'm going to play this out now. Because we want more power and toughness on our Urza Saga token. And we may as well get this guy down now because we're going to have our mana tied up for the next couple of turns. Like, we're going to need to find a land next turn if we want to activate this without cracking our petal. Okay, this looks like another Force of Will. Sure. 5 mana counter spell. Still good. Need to shave a little bit of time of our opponent's clock in case this game goes for very long. Alright. Let's reinforce our opponent. They have yet to find an Uro or a Minsk and Boo. Okay, we've drawn a basic plane. This is good for us. So we now have a threat. Now, dress down does kill our threats, which is a little bit sad. We've seen 1 dress down, so maybe 2 in their list. Oh my god, dodge it. They've seen nearly half their deck though. So play an Uro, it just sticks in play because of the Torpor Orb. That's less good for us. A prismatic ending on the Torpor Orb. Sure, that's fine, I guess. We do have another one. Does mean our creature is smaller though, for the purposes of endurances and things. Okay, we're just going to make another guy here. So I think the way we lose this game is if our opponent puts a Minsk and Boo into play. We don't have a Pithing Needle because we didn't see that coming. We can't get the Phyrexian Dreadnought now. We can get the Grindstone and threaten the Grindstone kill down the line though. Or we can get a Mox Opal that allows us to cast our Once Upon a Time. I think I'm on the Mox Opal train here. So we have 5 this turn and 10 next turn if they have nothing. I suspect they have something. That'll do. Yikes. Yeah, so there's the second dress down that we thought they had in their list. I've watched Bosch and Roll play this deck a fair bit, so I've got a pretty good idea of all the cards in their list. We can crack this Once Upon a Time end of turn, but it will cost us our Mox Opal. Our Lotus Petal, which also shuts off our Mox Opal. So I don't think we want to do that. Like, we can also just play the Torpor Orb, so maybe we do that? I don't know. We found a threat. Stony Silence. Okay, so we are definitely casting this turn. So this is green, and this is green. Stony Silence, I haven't seen that one around for a while. So part of the problem we have here is that we only have access to 1 mana. Do we want to try and get our opponent with a Phyrexian Dreadnought that can get prismatic endings? Well, all of our things can get prismatic ending, to be honest. I think if we take the Dreadnought, like we can take the Fiddlebender, and then if we get the land, we can try and Fiddlebender this way, but they have a Karakas. So that's probably bad. We're quite a long way off combat. I think we just take the Dreadnought here. Sure. So 2 of our mana sources no longer function. Painter's Servant. Okay, pass the turn. Our opponents still have to find a win condition, and then they also have to win another game in time, so we might be alright. Don't really want to win games by going to time, but if that's what happens, that's what happens. Okay, Ancient Tomb is pretty good. So play this, Torpor Orb. Play this guy. Alright, we have a 2-turn clock. Now, our opponent is a Swords to Plowshares prismatic ending deck, so this guy surviving doesn't seem the most likely thing I've ever seen. 3 mana. Meltdown for 2. Yep, sure. We lose a bunch of permanents. And we got Ponder. They did not shuffle with their Ponder. That's pretty bad news for us. A Canonist. So we can play this one over the Painter right now. Because we don't have enough to just combo off. Like, if our opponent does find a threat, they can close this game quite quickly. Because we have no life total to work with. We're getting to see all our opponents hate things as well, which is quite nice. Well, it's not nice because they've got loads of them. Sure. Expressive Iteration from our opponent. Sure. Our opponent is officially over halfway through their library. Play Misty Rainforest. Now we're brainstorming. So if we draw a Grindstone, we can deploy Painter's Servant Grindstone, and then hope that that's good enough. That's certainly a way we can win the game. Like, if we draw a Grindstone, we might just be able to grind them out naturally at this rate. Now if they have an Uro, that's going to just find their Uro eventually. There's the Uro. Be good for us to draw our Karakas. Buy us a lot of turns. Okay, they're doing the bounce trick, so they get to just keep using it as a draw engine rather than putting it into play. Let's just play a Canonist. Terminus off the top. Sure, so they run 2 Terminuses. I gotcha. So, this is going to be Uro. I don't know why they bounced their Uro, because they probably wanted to cast it this turn, right? Like, I guess they knew they had the Terminus on top. Okay, so they got Minsk and Boo. So we are dead on our next turn. Portable Hole is not in our deck anymore. Savannah. Right, let's just waste a bit of our opponent's time. Sure. So flinging this us. Going through motions, shave some time off the clock. Can our opponent beat us in the time? I don't know. So Portable Hole is something that can answer Stony Silence, but it's not a very long-term answer. Whereas these March of Otherworldly Lights are much more long-term answers. So I'm certainly interested in these as options. Pithing Needle for Minsk and Boo is going to be good here. The Once Upon a Times, maybe they have to come out, and the Oswalds are also things that I'm probably thinking about taking out. It's a lot of March of Otherworldly Lights, though, for a deck that's not... Like, this is the let's make sure we don't lose the game in the time we have left to play it type thing, but I don't know if that's how I want to play this game. Maybe we can keep one more Once Upon a Time in play. Actually, maybe, yeah, that's probably better than the Karakas, isn't it? Is that good enough? I don't think we want Thorn of Amethyst to slow this game down, but it's an option. Yeah, I think this is a bit of a grim defensive posture with the Much Other Alliance. We could always have a 2-2 split, but what does this hand do? This hand plays a turn 1 unlicensed Hearse, or it plays a turn 1 Urza Saga and starts playing Urza Saga game. Interesting. Which of those is better? I think we probably just play the Saga out first and just play the Saga game. It's a very aggressive thing that our opponent can't counterspell, and it forces them to have more specific answers like Dress Down to actually get the value out of it. It also finds us the Grindstone on turn 3, so we can just kill our opponent on turn 3 that way. But we probably have to leverage this for resources. Our opponent can have a Wasteland, because these 4-colour decks, believe it or not, play a couple of Wastelands. A Tundra. It's probably going to Ponder, yeah. I don't think we can just play out Painter's Servant next turn and then try and combo them on 3. I don't think that's a viable strategy against Hot Bamp when they're pondering, and we've also seen that their deck is nothing but like hate pieces. I think we have to leverage all the value we can and try and slip something through to win the game later. I think that's how we actually win this game. Play this out, pass turn, make a guy. Next time we can play this, so our guy's going to be slightly bigger. We can get a Mox and then play an unlicensed Hearse, a Scalding Tarn. So this feels like our opponent's going to dress us down. Let's make a thing. Let's see if they crack their Scalding Tarn in response. They did not crack their Scalding Tarn in response. So I can stop them from dressing us down this turn and mess with their land. That's such a cheesy way to try and win the game. Yeah, I'm down for it. Oh, we forgot to play our land out, didn't we? We missed a point of damage there. I'm too busy thinking about this Pithing Needle line. I don't actually want to play it out because of Meltdown, actually. I think I'm going to hold this back. I don't want to get Meltdowned into oblivion. Now, if our opponent doesn't have another land, then this Pithing Needle is great. They have another land, sure. Okay. Unlikely to get the cheese off with the Needle. So, Dress Down kills both of our guys. Okay, the pain costs at end of turn. Okay, so it's the Dress Down in the end step. So that means we can't make a Painter's Servant our turn that does anything. But what it does mean is we get to make a Phyrexian Dreadnought basically for free. So I'm certainly down for this. So we'll pay 1, 2, and this. So we will cast our Phyrexian Dreadnought for 1. Since you've helped us out so lovely there. And then we're saving our Blacksmith skill to save one of these guys. So their Dress Down helped us out a little bit there. And we're sitting on the Blacksmith skill. We probably should have tapped the Ancient Den for that so we can keep the Savannah. But there we go. We can use the Blacksmith skill to save one of our lands if necessary. But if they go for like a Meltdown, we can Blacksmith skill our Phyrexian Dreadnought so it can live. And that will cause our opponent, hopefully, some problems. This looks like a Meltdown for 1 to me. Meltdown for 1. Targeting this. Let's see if we can Blacksmith skill our way out of this. Hexproof and indestructible. Alright. We'll lose our Pithing Needle so they can go and get a plough here. I can go and get a land for a plough. But I didn't expect the thing we got off the Urza Saga to last for very long. Okay, so probably losing our white mana source here. That would be the correct one in my opinion. Okay, they're going for that one, sure. And then they're cracking this. They're going to ponder. They ponder, we get to hit them for 13 at least. Okay, it looks like they're holding up a plough here. They could have done this in my upkeep instead. I imagine. Okay. Let's attack them. The last Blacksmith skill worked, so maybe this one will too. So this puts our opponent to dead on board from either of our threats. Now, they're probably just going to terminus us, because, you know, that's how the game works sometimes. They need to answer both of our creatures this turn, otherwise they're dead. Now, they can play a land, plough this, play an endurance. Something like that would be pretty good against us. But they can't crack any fetch lands, actually, so they can't do that. So they'd have to play, well, they could play a non-fetch land. A Brainstorm, that's usually a sign that your opponent is digging for things. And we've also got the one white open that they're considering here. So we might have another Blacksmith skill. Our opponent also has 5 minutes on their clock. So even if they can survive this torrent, every single creature they have to remove until, well, they can play an Uro, which gives them some life, but while the Hushbringer's in play, they can't do that. But obviously, while the Hushbringer's in play, they're dead anyway. Tropical Island. Okay. Another Brainstorm. So they're getting to see one card more here. That doesn't bode well for our opponent. Yay, we got it. Right. Blacksmith skill was pretty good there. That's the reason it's in the deck, and we had an extra one from the one that Quentin 5-0'd with, because he said he really wanted a third Blacksmith skill. So that came in handy there. As you expect, it's just a a counter spell, but it can save your thing from Meltdown, which was super relevant there, which is a nice bit of text, the indestructible one, rather than just giving it Shroud or whatever. Right, so we are 2-1. So let's go into the 4th round. Lo and behold, we have won a die roll. Our hand can shut down the initiative decks pretty well, the turn 1 Torpor Orb, and then we can play an Urza Saga game. That seems okay to me. I think we will keep this one. We're going to have to find something to do on turn 2. So the other option we had was using our Petal and the Urza Saga to make the turn 1 Torpor Orb. But I think it's probably just better to have the Torpor Orb out straight away. So this will hopefully shut down a Doomsday deck, which might be what our opponent's playing. Preordain off of this seems relatively Doomsday-centric to me. So I think we stick to the plan here. I think we will play out this Lotus Petal in case we need to pop our guy. So we could play... if we play the Fiddlebender out, that does give us another threat. And we can also tutor for Ethersworn Canonist. Or we can play the Haywire Mite and leave this Lotus Petal in play, which seems better to me. Because it's the same damage either way. If our opponent is playing a Doomsday deck, we just need to clock them. So it's the same damage either way, and this gives us an emergency, like blow up a petal that they're leaving in play. Now, they will have a Brazen Borrow in their deck. So they can do a Doomsday pile with a Brazen Borrow in, but that does take a turn off their clock to do so. This Urza Saga can also go and get us a Phyrexian Dreadnought, which can just smash right into our opponent. So we have options. Okay, they played a Scrubland, so they don't have the shuffle effect. Dark Ritual. Okay, so they're casting it right now. I dislike playing against Doomsday with White Painter. Since I played a league with Doomsday with like a Doomsday expert on me, which is on my channel if you want to look back like a couple of months or whatever, I learned how to play against Doomsday a bit better, but I don't think the White Painter decks have a particularly great matchup against it, and we're probably going to see that in the very near future here. It's going to be a tough one, but are we Once Upon a Timing here? I don't think we are. So this makes 2. So this makes a guy that will be how big? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if we go and get, yeah, we can get a Shadowspear. We'll probably have to get a Pithing Needle actually, don't we, to try and shut down one of their guys. So they can't win through the Torpor Orb. So the other option here is we try and Once Upon a Time for something. But I think we're probably better off just getting our Urza Saga going here. It's be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we need to find 1 additional point damage. So, okay, it's Fairy Time Raveler. Sure. So we're going to lose the Torpor Orb, which means we're probably losing the game right now. Yep, so they're not giving us a chance to use our Haywire Mite in response. So we're just dead, even with a Torpor Orb. So this is why I don't think Torpor Orb is how you beat these decks. Thassa's Oracle. With 1 card in library. Can't do anything about that, we're just dead. Alright. So we have a Pithing Needle, so we weren't going to get a Pithing Needle, are we? Thorn of Amethyst is relatively useful here. We did see the splash for white, which usually means Monastery Mentor. I don't think we really can play around the Monastery Mentor like that. I think we just have to play a maximum amount of our stuff going off. I don't think we need a Soul Guide Lantern, so that could become a Pithing Needle. That's a pretty straight swap. The Haywire Mite is a guy that sometimes does something here. The Fiddlebender can just find more artifacts, so I don't hate that. We kind of want our combo pieces in so we can go fast. So maybe we can't board in these Thorn of Amethysts. Like, neither of these are actually great against Doomsday. Like, the Canonist does stop them doing Dark Ritual Doomsday, and it stops them killing you on the turn. So that's okay. That's like 1 turn it can buy you. So I don't hate that. Do you want Once Upon a Times? Feels like we kind of need them just so we can make our big Dreadnought hands. So maybe we can't afford these guys because we need to keep our Hushbringers in because they're really good. Give Once a Time. Like, it's either the Fiddlebenders go or the Thorn of Amethyst goes. I guess Fiddlebender... Is Fiddlebender too slow, whereas Thorn of Amethyst probably isn't, but then it doesn't beat down, so it's like, okay, you've kind of just exchanged a turn in one place for another. No, I think it has to be the Fiddlebenders. If we can just overload whatever answers they have, I think that's better. I don't think trying to board in removal spells to try and deal with our opponent's Thassa's Oracle in case they don't have an empty library, I don't think that's worth doing either. So what does this part do? So we have a turn 1 Canonist, I think is better here than a turn 1 Torpor Orb, because this at least beats down and it stops them being able to Doomsday on turn 1. Okay, let's cast without paying its mana cost. We don't have a Grindstone available. We do have an Urza Saga available. Is that good enough? I think we're probably on the Urza Saga train here. So if we go like Urza Saga, Ethersworn Canonist this turn. Yeah, that seems fine. So this will slow our opponent down, which is all we can ask. So this means they're down to 1 cantrip a turn, effectively. And then we can just keep deploying things like Hushbringer, or we can just go on the Urza Saga train. I think we're better off just on the Urza Saga train thinking about it. Reasons being is, if they do a pass the turn pile, we can then play the Torpor Orb. Now, they'll probably have something in their pile for the Torpor Orb, like the Teferi, it's just a good catch-all. But this is the way that we can kill our opponent the quickest, because we can play this next turn as well. And then we can get a Pithing Needle for one of the cyclers, the one that doesn't cost them life, Edge of Autumn. Okay, this is a pretty good one. It's a little tricky for us, but we can get around it, I suppose. Make ourselves a big lad. Untap. Make ourselves a big lad. We're very much the aggro in this matchup. So, I don't know if we want the Shadowspear to trample over here, or we just want the ability to... We can get the Grindstone, which represents messing up our opponent's pile and can give us the combo. Or we can get a Mox Opal so we can deploy a Hushbringer or Torpor Orb this turn. Or we can get the... We can't get the Dreadnought this turn because we don't have a Hushbringer in play. We could... I think we just get the Grindstone here and threaten to mess with our opponent's piles. So we'll play this one out. Go attacks. We'll just send in this guy. If he wants to trade with it, then that's... You know, it's going to have to go through this at some point. Okay, sure. Now, if they have more of them, that's annoying. But, like I said, we have to go through them at some point. Like, we have the Shadowspear, so it only soaks up 1 damage. I think representing a combo kill is going to be useful. And this is also very hard to build a Doomsday pile against if I have the mana open. Prismatic Ending for 2 on that guy. Sure. So they could Dark Ritual into Doomsday this turn. In which case, we deploy Torpor... Well, we're probably deploying Torpor Orb. Okay, so we're losing the Torpor Orb. Okay. But we can play the Hushbringer. We can play Hushbringer and Once Upon a Time. Also, if our opponent casts Personal Tutor, we can Grindstone off the top of their library. Another reason why the Grindstone is good here. Yeah, so Torpor Orb, as expected, is gone. Okay, so I'll play this out. And we go 1, 2, and the green. We cast this first, so we get the most information about what we're doing with our turn. A Savannah and an Ancient Tomb. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it doesn't really matter which land we get here. We'll always be able to do our grinding out. So I think we play that. We've already played our land for a turn, so we're going to play this one this way. Okay, and a Force of Will. Sure. So all creatures. If I go to 12, so I go to 6 if they Doomsday here. Looks like they do. Oh no, a Teferi. So this can just bounce our construct, and then we're a long ways off of being able to do anything this game now. A Savannah. They know we have a Savannah, so we're going to play out anyway. We can start milling our opponent naturally here. I don't think their graveyard's going to have anything that's going to give them any joy. We might get lucky and randomly spike the things that do stuff. There are a lot of multicoloured spells in their deck as well. Sure. I'm doing an instant speed ponder. So using this is just a free way of us clearing cards from top of their library that they don't want. Which is unfortunate for us a little bit, but I don't think we have anything else going on right now. We need to keep this as an instant speed thing to do. Okay, so we'll play this one out. Play out the Fiddlebender. So this represents the combo in a number of turns, because we can turn this into a Painted Servant, then we can turn this into a Grindstone. But I have to imagine our opponent's going to be able to win the game before then. So now our opponent's going to cast Doomsday. Now there is a Grindstone in play, so when we use the Grindstone, it's going to be difficult. It's kind of like a weird game of chicken. Okay, so we've got Ponder here. I think we have to let the Ponder go. We have to work out how to snag both of their things. I don't think we can realistically do that, unfortunately. Yeah, okay. So this is not a lethal one, so they're going to do it on the stack. Oh no, they have 3 because of the Teferi. Yeah, all right. So we just had nothing in that game, really. Like we had a Saga to beat down. We had a Hushbringer. We had our Torpor Orb. We had a Grindstone to mess with stuff. But this matchup, anyone who says that the mono white painter is good against Doomsday, I think is just wrong, really. I think this matchup is really horrible for the white deck. Like we've got 8 effects that mess with Thassa's Oracle, and neither of these games felt remotely close. Yeah, like they're a deck that has Hand Disruption, Counter Magic, Bounce Spells, and the ability to combo. So I just don't really know what we can do. Maybe If we grindstone when they have that Thassa's Oracle, so their Thassa's Oracle pile has 2 Thassa's Oracle in. So we cannot grind them both the way they stack their deck, because, you know, they're a Doomsday player, they know what they're doing. So we were kind of in a bit of a bind. We kind of had to hope that they had a personal tutor line rather than Doomsday. But yeah, so we just got a bit busted up with that one, which is unfortunate. I think that makes us 2-2 going into the final round, unfortunately. So this hand lets us play as a Saga game from turn 2, or we can Torpor Orb first and then try and get ourselves ahead with the Phyrexian Dreadnought down the line. We've got a bunch of options here. I think we keep this. We're a bit cold to Wasteland, but then again, we've got 2 planes on our deck. We're always going to be cold to Wasteland. Okay, so our opponent is an initiative deck, most likely. In theory, we should be good against this, but if they're on the play, they can get the initiative before we ever get to do anything here. Yeah, so they play White Plume Adventurer. Our turn 1 Torpor Orb does nothing. Okay, they're going to play turn 1 Seasoned Dungeoneer. Okay, they didn't do anything. That's a terrible hand. Why would you keep that hand? Right. No more initiative triggers. Yeah, my opponent's hand is really weird there. I don't know why you... Like, Chalice on 0 and Chalice on 1 on turn 1 isn't great. And they're in top deck mode. Obviously, they've top decked a creature, but they don't get the initiative here. So that might be okay for us. We can't play out our Lotus Petal. I think we have to play out our Saga here. Take the hit for 3. Like, they're not hitting us for, like, normal damages. So we should be okay. Now, they have Touch the Spirit Realm, which can get rid of the Torpor Orb. This also does grow on its own anyway. Another Chalice of the Void. Sure. So I guess we play this one out. We can't actually get the Shadowspear into play because of the Chalice of the Void here. But we do get to make a 12-12 next turn. So that's got to count for something. But we are taking a bit of a kicking from our Ancient Tomb here. City of Traitors. Okay. An Elite Spellbinder. Do we care about Elite Spellbinder? Well, we care about it. It's not going to do any effects. But the fact that it's going to hit us is going to be a problem. This is 4, 5, 6, 7. So we take 7 next turn because we can't block this. So if we crack this, we go to 1. Like, we're always dead on the turn, aren't we? Having the Shadowspear in hand is probably going to cost us the game. If we get a green source, we can get the Haywire Mite. If we make an Urza Saga token and our opponent explores to put a counter on this, then we are dead on the backswing. Right, so this is 6. So this is 5, 6, 7, 8. If we tap this. If we don't tap this, we don't have a guy, so we won't be able to race our opponent anyway. But if they come in for 1 attack and then pass, we need to have maximum amount of damage in play. If we make the Urza Saga token, how big is it going to be? 1, 2, 3, 4. We can't make 2 Urza Saga tokens. Yikes. I think we have to make it here. I guess we could draw Painter's Servant, a Grindstone, so that doesn't do anything here. I think we are tapping this for mana here. So if we get this guy, this allows us to represent lethal damage. We can play this out. We're not going to do anything with it, but this represents our opponent. This can kill our opponent next turn. This is 17, 18, 19 damage. Now our opponent, because of that, might just poke with just the Seasoned Dungeoneer, in which case they'll only take 14 and we'll lose the game. So our opponent has to attack with both things, and they have to fail on their Explore here. So we've given our opponent a position where they can make a mistake. Okay, now if they have another creature in hand, it's not a mistake. Okay, City of Traitors. So we are not dead this turn. So if they have like a White Plume Adventure or something, that can block pretty effectively and also untap another one of their guys. Jeez. Oh, this deck. Tap both of these. It's lethal. We block 1 here. And then we die to the Seasoned Dungeoneer attack on the next turn. Oh, yikes. Oh, this deck. I hate it so much. Alright, so that's the sort of matchup where our deck is kind of designed to beat this. And we shut down their initiative. But just the sheer power of having that guy in play was enough to win in the game. Like, they did draw and cast it on turn 2. But, Jesus. Oh, lordy. Okay, so how are we going to win this game? We don't need Graveyard Hate. We would quite like some amount of these things, perhaps. On the play, Thorn of Amethyst is okay, but only okay. We need our Shadowspear. This is on our deck. Maybe we stick it on our guy and we can race and we win that game. So we did get a little bit unlucky in that regards. But Portable Hole is something we can get with the Fiddlebender. But Fiddlebender is very bad in the world of Karakas. So I'm thinking maybe we're trimming the portable hole here as well. This gets us some Blacksmith skills and some Otherworldly lights. And get rid of the Soul Lantern, keep another one of these, and this goes. Is that where we're at? The Haywire Mite is something we can get off of the Saga that can blow up the Chalice. And these can also blow up Chalices. These are just to protect us from the removal, and also we can mess up combat mass with them. Oh, this deck is supposed to be very good against initiative, right? The composition of this deck feels like it's built to beat initiative. If we can't beat initiative with it, then I don't really know what we're doing. Okay, so we keep this and we play out an Urza Saga game. Do we want to play out this Torpor Orb? I think we have to play out the Torpor Orb first. Because if our opponent makes a turn 1 White Plume Adventurer, we just lose the game. Which is ridiculous. Our opponent kept on 7, so they're going to make a turn 1 initiative guy. Chromox, yep. A Containment Priest, interesting. Okay, so this is just a 3-1 flyer. Not something we can readily interact with, to be honest. Play this one out. We don't want to play out our second Torpor Orb because the 2 life is more important, I think, right now. So next turn we Urza Saga our guy out and we hold up Karakas. What is this going to name? Elemental. Okay, so they're holding it for the Solitude. Seasoned Dungeoneer. So we might just lose to this because this creature is just really strong. Okay, Cavern of Souls. So there's no point trying to blow this up and waste our time either. Sure, you can get counter there. We'll play out our Ancient Den. There's no point attacking with our Haywire Mite into their guys. So this time we might be able to Shadowspear our way out of the game. That Shadowspear opener. Awkward. Alright. So we're going to take 7, possibly 8 this turn. Which is pretty bad. But we are going to have lifelink guys, and we're going to have the Blacksmith skill to back it up with as well. Can't block any of these. Now, if they play a White Plume Adventurer and untap their guy, then we probably are losing the game. Is Walking Ballista, perhaps? A Walking Ballista. For 2? Sure. That's not great, but not the end of the world either. And dealing 1 damage to this. We gain 2 life. That's helpful, actually. Now we have to do some math of our own. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can play out our Painted Servant and have our Grindstone. But if our opponent has a removal spell, we lose because we don't have the mana to cast Blacksmith's Forge. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we won't be able to cast Blacksmith's skill. We know our opponent's got an Amiria's Call. So they've got 2 cards in hand. They named this one Elemental, so I think they might have a Solitude in hand. So they have 1 card that we maybe have to feign here. Now, the other thing we can do is we can get a Shadowspear off of this, equip it to this guy, holding up our Karakas. So this will be a 3, 4, 5 power guy. So we'll gain 5 life, and we'll go up to 13. And then on the crackback, we're going to take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, possibly 10. So we do win that race, I think, if we go that route. Actually, no, we don't, because if we attack... Oh, no, because it's got trample, actually, yeah. So I think we have to go that route. Yeah, I'm not happy about it, but I think this is the surefire way. They've very clearly left open their 1 white mana. So we get this Shadowspear. We play out Karakas. We equip this to this guy. And then if they have the removal spell, we get to Blacksmith Skillet. Yeah, here we go. Target this, pay white. This also gives us 2 more life. So this will be a nice big smash of damage for us. And this represents pretty close to a 2-turn clock. We have the option of playing our Painted Servant in case we draw the Grindstone next turn. I don't hate that. It does cost us 2 life, but we have quite a lot of life now. So I think this is fine. This guy can block the Walking Ballista if necessary. Which will name green because we don't really want to enable Solitudes because they'll come into play and just be a 3-2 lifelinker. Yeah, okay, that's what they're doing, but we have a guy to block with that now. So actually it's 3 plus 4. That's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So this isn't lethal if they attack with everything. Okay, let's see what this Dungeoneer does first. Cavern of Souls, enter the reveal card zone. Okay. So this is 7, 8, 9, 10. So this puts us to 3. And then we crack back for 6, which puts us to 9. And then they crack back for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we lose. If we block this, they got to 10. We attack them with this. We gain we take 4, 5, 6, 7. So that would put us to 6. And then we'll gain 6 and go to 12. But then on the crackback, they can hit us for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then this is also pinging us for 11. Jesus. If we keep the Painted Servant, we're kind of hoping to draw into the Grindstone. But we can always try and block the Solitude next turn. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if I think we take this and maybe draw the Grindstone, and then next turn this can go under the Solitude. We can also move the Shadowspear onto the Painted Servant as well to help. If they've got another Walking Ballista, they can just ping us down and kill us there. Touch of the Spirit Realm. Alright. That's pretty bad. We're still out. We've still got our out for the Grindstone. So this play, whilst it's bad for us, it meant that us not blocking was the correct play. Grindstone, please. One time. March of Otherworldly Light. Does that do anything? So we equip the Shadowspear to our guy, and that's about it. We can't March of Otherworldly Light any of their things. The Karakas doesn't do anything. Jesus. I don't think we can win this game. We had turn 1 Torpor Orb against the initiative deck, and they've just smashed us with everything else anyway. Yikes. We don't have any white cards to pitch this, so we can't kill anything scary. This will cost us... We can't cast it to kill this, which is the thing that... Well, so they have 2 evasion threats. If we equip this to this, we block here, we're dead to the evasion threats. Yeah, we just can't beat the initiative deck. Right? Sure. There we go. We lose the match, and that is 2 and 3. So let's have a look at the deck. So I like a lot of what the deck is doing. We did have that game where we probably lost it because we just had this dead card in Phyrexian Dreadnought in our hand. Now, there is definitely an option of maybe we should be playing more towards trying to get Phyrexian Dreadnoughts into play than I have been doing. But, so like some of the things where we're trying to get Urza Saga going first. So we play a Torpor Orb, then we play the Saga. So maybe we're supposed to be playing Urza Saga on 1, then turn 2, instead of making a Saga construct, make the Torpor Orb. Maybe that's slightly better. But I think in that last matchup, that probably doesn't save us, to be honest. I think this deck is the most coherent Painted Servant Dreadnought deck I've seen so far. There are some evident weaknesses in it, obviously. So the Once Upon a Time isn't always castable. But that's fine. It's not the end of the world. The Torpor Orbs and Hushbringers sometimes will be dead cards. We definitely had games where these were just blanks in our hand, that if they were a business spell, we might have been... So that last game, if the second Torpor Orb was something useful, maybe we can win that game. And same with the Dreadnoughts. So these cards don't do anything on their own. You need resources to get them going. So let's pull these to one side for a second and show you some slight issues that I can see with this deck, potentially. So all of these cards in this pile do not do anything on their own most of the time. Now, Torpor Orb and Hushbringer can certainly stop what your opponent's doing. But as we saw against Doomsday, one of these doesn't stop a Doomsday player from winning the game. They ignore it. And a second one, they probably have a counter spell at some point or a duress. So, you know, we had double of these and the Canonist, and it did nothing against the Doomsday player. Now, that was, you know, probably a slightly above average Doomsday draw. But even so, I don't think one of these shuts down Doomsday as much as people like to think it does. Now, we have... So these are artifacts, though. So these do pump our Urza Saga constructs. But as we've seen, Urza Saga constructs aren't feeling amazing in the meta right now because they get outclassed by initiative guys pretty quickly. And the only control deck that's even in the format, really, is Hotbant, which has all these dress downs, which is a real pain for them. And the other deck that runs... so there's a better Urza Saga deck. So the best Urza Saga deck is, in terms of getting Urza Saga tokens big, is the 8-cast deck. So we're never going to be able to beat through our opponent's 8-cast deck, and they also do run Hurkyl's Recall. So in terms of this being an artifact, it is kind of useful, and it's something we can tutor for Fiddlebender, but we can't tutor bonus copies away into something good, which might be something you want to look at, because otherwise we have the options of a lot of dead draws in our deck. Hushbringer is a flyer, so it has something. It has a little bit of lifelink. It can block a Marit Lage Taken. This card is probably just about fine. It's weak, but because of the interaction with the Dreadnought, it's probably fine, I think. It's not this is not a legacy quality card on its own, but with the Dreadnought, it's okay. And the fact is, it can do a little bit of something. It can block a Murktide for a turn or whatever. It can buy you time. Part of the issue is, aside from Oswald, and maybe Once Upon a Time, buying time is still just making us draw one card from the top of our deck unless we have an Urza Saga ticking. It's not like we're playing the Red Painter where we have Phyrexian Dragon Engine going back and forth along with loads of tutor effects and Fable the Mirror Breaker. So the Red Painter deck just has, every turn you buy the Red Painter deck, it gets a lot more out of it because it has more cards that find more cards. Whereas we don't really have that here. We're kind of all in on what we're doing. What we're doing is quite powerful, though. I will say that. So I've been able to Phyrexian Dreadnought on turn 1, which is something we definitely can do with this deck. With like Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petal, or turn 2 Phyrexian Dreadnought is certainly reasonable. These are definitely things that are pretty good. Now, we're a little bit unlucky to get paired against Hotband, but we did actually win that matchup. So that was not one I was expecting to win. The fact that we lost against the initiative deck whilst putting a Torpor Orb into play on turn 1, followed by Urza Sagaing out for the rest of the game, is kind of worrying. Maybe that means we should be playing that differently and not playing out the Torpor Orb. But if we're not playing out the Torpor Orb to stop the turn 1 initiative, and we're just trying to use it to get the turn 3 Phyrexian Dreadnought, how good are these Torpor Orbs is the question, right? Because they are supposed to buy you a load of time against the initiative, but as we saw, a Seasoned Dungeoneer is just too strong. Like, we can't ever block it, and it grows, and it filters the top of their deck, and it's just very hard for us to answer. And with the amount of guys that they can put into play, they might be able to race a Dreadnought. Like, they have removal for Dreadnought as well. Like, they have Touch of the Spirit Realm, so they have a way of removing it that doesn't even cost them life, so they can just take out of combat for a turn without giving us a load of life, and they can just sort of chip us away that way, or they can just remove it and keep going. And they do have evasion threats as well with the 3/1 Flyer, the Elite Spellbinder. So obviously Hushbringer would be better in that situation in a lot of ways, because they play their guys, and then you can block the 3/1 with your Hushbringer, gain a little bit of life, and you've kind of like soaked up the initiative. Like, if they play another initiative guy, sure, but the Hushbringer is rarely going to be a dead card in a creature matchup because it can block, whereas Torpor Orb, as we saw, was completely a dead card. We played the first one. It slowed our opponent down slightly. Probably took one turn off our opponent's clock, but it also took one turn off of our deploying things to the board. And the second one we had in our hand was just nothing. It didn't do anything there. So I think, I don't think that's necessarily a problem with this deck. I think that's a problem with the fact that initiative cards exist. So every time I play against the initiative, the white initiative cards, the more I'm beginning to think that we have a serious problem in Legacy with them being legal, to be honest. It's so reductive on what is playable in the format, so we can't... Like, if you're playing an aggro deck, you either need to have access to Force of Will or you're in an initiative deck. It doesn't really feel great to be anything else if you're doing aggro. And control decks really struggle to beat the initiative because it just ticks up on its own and gives them hexproof threats, and they don't necessarily have ways of getting the initiative back. And then that just sort of leaves like combo decks. So we're kind of in like a combo deck, Delver, initiative type metagame, which doesn't feel very healthy in my opinion. I did enjoy this deck. I think the 2-3 record is a little bit underwhelming, and it probably deserved better than that. Like I said, Quentin got a 5-0 with it. He had different matchups to me. That's fair enough, but we beat the Delver deck. And we beat the Hot Band deck. So we beat good decks. You know, we weren't winning against like some random homebrews and getting lucky. We lost to lands off a mulligan. That's a little bit unfortunate. I think most of the time, if we keep a 7, I think we can probably squeak that matchup and win it. So I think this deck is fine. Actually, I think, you know, the matchups and stuff are good. I think the problem with it is I don't actually think it's that good against the initiative, which is so weird to say with these Hushbringers and Torpor Orbs. But I think the issue of that is, as we saw, the initiative creatures are just really good. And they're just accelerating out these creatures. So if we had like Torpor Orbs and Phyrexian Dreadnoughts in hand, then I think that matchup would have been okay. But instead we were playing Urza Saga Torpor Orb hands. So maybe we're supposed to mulligan really, really heavily into that. But it feels like if we don't have the Dreadnought or the combo in our hand, and so like the Urza Saga is something we're relying on. So if we had Urza Saga Lotus Petal, then we can at least get Torpor Orb out on turn 1 and start ticking up Saga. So maybe that's better. But it feels like the draws you need to beat the initiative are a lot more exact than I would like for a deck that on paper looks like it's like this is how we kill initiative deck. So yeah, I like this deck a lot. It's really fun, and I was a bit worried that I was be like, oh, I'm going to have to buy some foil Phyrexian Dreadnoughts if this deck's good. And I do think the deck is decent. I think the problem is there is an issue with Legacy right now. And like maybe I should be mulliganing really hard to like 5s and stuff just to try and get the things. But as we saw, even if you stop their creature from getting the initiative, they're going to get you with just the abilities it has. Now, maybe we were unlucky that our opponent had Seasoned Dungeoneer both times, and we did get a little bit unlucky in terms of the Chalice. So maybe I'm over-egging that a little bit. But it didn't feel like we were playing like an initiative killer deck. So I've played Delver, and Delver feels like an initiative killer. So when I played Delver against initiative, it didn't even feel fair. It just felt like I was just easily winning all the games against initiative. Whereas this felt like I needed to get a specific type of draw. Whereas the red painted deck feels a lot better against the initiative because you just have like, you're comboing, you have removal because you've got lightning bolts, you've got furies, and you can have Ensnaring Bridge, but your ability to combo is just much quicker, and you have more fast mana because you've got like 6 Petal Spirit Guide effects, which basically covers these. But then you've also got 2 more City of Traitors usually, so you just have slightly more push on your accelerating your combo out. And like I said, every turn you buy yourself a red painter, on average, you're probably going to see more than 1 card in the mid to late game. So I think that's something to think about in terms of what this deck can achieve. And also, Oswald as an engine is very bad in a world of Karakas. Like I think this card is great, but the amount of times it feels like it's a liability. So like let's say we had Fiddlebenders in against the initiative deck. If they've got Karakas, then this is a dead card as well. So this can end up going onto this pile as well. So we can end up with a load of cards that don't actually do anything necessarily on their own. Like, yes, the Torpor Orb shuts stuff down, but their creatures are still creatures that beat you down. Like, if this was, I don't know, like a 1/2 flyer or a 2/1 flyer, I think that would be just better. Whereas this feels like it can be a bit of a liability. So the Canonists aren't great in the initiative matchup, obviously. But again, I think you need a critical mass of creatures in that matchup as well. I don't know. This deck feels like the sort of thing that should be good, and it felt good in all the matchups that weren't initiative, and I think that's because of the format and the fact that initiative probably shouldn't exist in my view. I'm not saying it definitely needs bans right now, but I think I would prefer bans for it. Now, as time goes on, if people can't necessarily innovate to change that, and the new set doesn't change that, then I think we probably want to be looking at whether or not we ban things. But Blacksmith skill was great. Thorn of Amethyst never really came up. There was an argument for maybe this should be the Mind Break Trap, so you have a turn 0 interaction. I'd certainly be interested in that. But other than that, I think the sideboard is more or less fine. I'm not really sure where I wanted the Ensnaring Bridge. I didn't brought it in against 2020 making things, but I think it is probably good against Stinging Show. That deck has fallen off, so I don't know if that's necessary. Pithing Needle is something I quite like in the main. Maybe even over one of the Torpor Orbs, just so we're less likely to get dead draws, but then our Phyrexian Dreadnoughts get worse. So maybe we need less Dreadnoughts. I don't know. Feels like if you run decently, you can definitely do well with this deck. And I think it definitely has the ability to beat initiative. But I think if you were to play like 100 games of this versus initiative, I am not entirely sure you would end up with a positive record at all. Which feels mad considering the contents of this deck. All right, I think we're done for today. I'd like to thank Quentin for sending this list over in the Discord. This was a really fun deck list to play, and I really like it. Even though it's only a 2-3 record, I'm a bit down on how the last game went. I think the way we lost wasn't necessarily the deck's fault for the most part. We did occasionally have dead cards, but that is an A+B combo deck problem. Maybe we could fix that with some little tweaks that I was mentioning. But I like this deck, and I'm not ready to buy Phyrexian Dreadnoughts in foil yet, but this was a fun one, and I'd like to see how it develops in future, and I think it's something to keep an eye on. And yeah, I am rambling, and I'm really tired, so I apologise for that. All right, thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Subscribers are what I need most right now. So if you know anyone who wants to subscribe to a YouTube channel to help someone out, by all means, send them my stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.